Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Tiger Talk. Excited to be joined today by three of our principals. We have Paula Wolter-Madsen, Peter Thor, and Darcy Love joining us today. We're going to talk about Amplify Your Impact and some work taking place at some of our sites this year. First thing, though, I want to share just some general announcements like we typically start off with. Just kind of going down some things taking place in the district. First thing, our Career and Technical Institute. We've been talking about this site for about 3 years now. We are really close to getting occupancy and moving into that building. The last couple weeks have really been the most exciting weeks of the whole project because we're walking in and it's all these final touches taking place and it's really starting to come together and feel like a school. So we will be moving in that site starting within the next week, and classes will start taking place in the new center on November 6th, the first day of second quarter. So really excited to get that opened up and get our kids out there. Also on that site, we had a shed in the back that we've talked about in the past. We had a storm a couple years ago, or a year ago, that building blew down. That new shed is just about complete too. That should be done by the beginning of November and be complete so we can start using that for storage of items as well. Some things taking place in buildings. Early Childhood has a number of different family events taking place that they're planning. We have spots open in some of these events yet, so families with an early childhood age student interested in getting involved and learning a little bit more about those activities, reach out to our early childhood office and find out more about that, and you can get signed up that way. Early childhood also, we have a bunch of Help Me Grow referrals coming in. Along with that taking place and some testing happening for students there, we're doing some screening. So kindergarten students that hadn't been screened, that recently happened. And our early childhood, our preschool screening is taking place every Monday. It started here this week, so back every Monday throughout the rest of the year, we'll be doing preschool screening at Parkside. If you're interested or want to know more about that or feel like you haven't done that yet, reach out to early childhood office as well for that. We can give you some more information. At Parkside, a lot of things taking place there. Something really exciting that Darcy's going to talk about in a little bit too. We're looking at students writing composition and handwriting this year in a new way. So Parkside's doing a part of that focus this year, selecting one student each month that's a star writer. They have a board as you come in the office where that student's recognized for being that. They're chosen for some effort, on their effort, improvement, or overall achievement with the writing skills. So a way to help increase those skills and just make it exciting and fun for some of our youngest learners. Another thing taking place at Parkside, we've had a lot of changes with our reading instruction this year, or over the past couple of years in all of our schools, and something Parkside's doing this year that we're really excited about. During conference nights, Darcy and Emily Carroll, our reading instructional coach, they're offering some sessions for parents to come in and learn a little bit more about just what the reading block looks like so that parents can talk to their kids about what's happening in school and learn how to maybe support their kids at home too with that, because reading instruction looks different than when we went to school. So that's happening. We're offering 3 different sessions each night of conferences this fall. So parents will get some information from the school about that if you haven't gotten that already, or connect with the school about what you want to know with that and get some information. I encourage parents to attend those. It'll be a good session to learn more. At Southview, 3rd graders, we had Fire Safety Week just taking place. 3rd grade is a big year for that. In addition to the fire posters and some of the visits and stuff, the firemen come to the school. We do a drill with a fire truck that comes through. They also have the smokehouse, and Pluggy, the remote control fire hydrant, comes in and he squirts the kids, and they just talk about fire safety. So a fun thing for our 3rd graders. A lot of things taking place there, just getting them more informed about fire safety. Other thing that took place recently at Southview, we had a surprise visit from the SMSU women's basketball team. They came and they spent recess time with some of our Southview kids the other day, just last week at the SMSU Day of Service, October 11th. That's just a great activity. Our kids love having the college-age kids. They're just community visits to come and do that. So that was a lot of fun for our kids. I know we had some pictures out on social media and stuff encouraging that, and really appreciate the community support with those things. At the middle school, 5th grade students got to attend the environmental fair recently, end of September. At the Lyon County Fairgrounds, they did a number of different sessions. They learned about recycling, glaciers, soil, wetlands, drones, trees, stream tables, all sorts of things related to environment. Great event for the kids to be able to be part of that. Middle school also recently, along with Maytech, they hosted an event. It was called Change the Outcome. It was a training learning about substance use and how that impacts their lives and thinking about some better decisions. Very well-received program that took place at that site. Last site we were talking about is high school. High school homecoming was all sites we celebrate homecoming, but really high school is the heart of the homecoming activities. That was the week of October 2nd. Very busy week, lots of activities all over. We had the big football game on Friday night. We celebrated hometown grant we received from T-Mobile that evening. And following that game, that event, we had the homecoming dance. We had over 550 kids come and attend that dance. So nice accumulation of the event, and certainly a fun event for our high school kids that night. Last thing at the high school I want to call out and draw some attention to, we've got a kind of a fun program taking place with our, we've talked a lot about careers and CTE education across the district, different sites, things happening. Our employability skills class, so it's a group of students with special needs at the high school. They went through our PAYS lab that we've talked about in the past at the middle school last year. They did that training, some of the basic skills, ready to try something new. So this year, that group of students has partnered with Chartwells, and along with that program, they are starting a new business, if you will, at the high school. They're calling it Tiger Cafe. So students are working along, learning more of those skills. They'll actually be making a variety of different seasonal coffees and drinks and selling to to teachers and staff and such at the high school. So fun event, fun program for those kids just to learn some more employability skills and get to do that right at the school. We want to call a big thanks to Nicole Jans and Gretchen Stelter, a couple of our high school teachers that are putting a lot of effort into making that happen, make this a great experience for our kids. Finally, fall activities. We are nearing the end of our fall activity season already. I know the weather's changing, and it's just hard to believe that we're that far into the year. Every year it seems to go faster than the year before, but it's been a great season this fall. We've got, of course, all the tournament and stuff still coming up. We're anticipating a lot of great things with all of our teams there yet too. So look forward to wrapping up the season with that. Encourage you to come out and attend some fall events if you haven't done so yet. We want to do a special shout out to Jesus Reyes. He's one of our staff members who is also an assistant coach, and he has been named the section Assistant Coach of the Year for soccer. Jesus does a great job with our kids and connecting with families, and really appreciate all the work that he does. A lot of things, like I say, taking place in district. But one of the things taking place in the district is we've been setting goals recently and thinking about where are we going this year and what are we doing, what's the work we're taking place. We have been doing a theme each year. We've done that last few years. This year we're talking about amplify your impact is our theme. So something you guys have all spent some time on. So we're going to talk a little about what does that mean? Mm-hmm. What does amplify your impact mean at all these different levels? Thinking about amplifying your impact, we always start with some testing. We base everything off of data. So we started off the year, we did some fall testing already, some different screeners, and you guys have had a chance to kind of do some initial review of some of that initial data. So I'm going to throw this question out to all three of you. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in the data that you've collected this fall, and what are some big celebrations that you're noticing so far?
Well, for us at Parkside, and for all of the sites, but our data really drives all of that improvement work. And so we were excited to see this year that our students retained a lot of those foundational skills that we spent so much time on last year, those foundational reading skills. So that really helped solidify what we had done last year was working well. So we want to continue that. But then we also were able to identify some areas then that we could focus on for this year to help improve those overall reading scores.
Great.
So as the students come over from Parkside to us, last year was the first year we implemented Dibbles as an assessment tool to kind of gauge where students are. It was really fun to see kind of our charts last year compared to this year in the fall, to see the number of kids as the grades go up, that the kids that need the most support are going down. Mm-hmm. And so that's a huge applause to the work that's happening at the lower grade levels and that are just going through our system.
Mm-hmm. It was exciting for us. The instructional coach, Jean Mather, and I were looking at the individual strands and the standards that we did well on or that were a strength. And it was interesting, all grades 5 through 8, one of their strengths was numbers and operations. And then 8th grade also data analysis and probability. And for language arts, all 5th through 7th grade, their strength was literary text and 8th grade vocabulary. So that was exciting to see that when we're trying to look at all of those strands and the standards.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. We're really taking this fall, and we do every fall, and setting those baselines for where are we going. And we talk about all the planning that takes place in the summer. We can set some general parameters, but until we really find out where our kids are at, we've really been working to drive that work to very individualized pieces. A lot of that work is driven off of students with extra needs and how do we provide some intervention pieces. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing in the data. Like, what are some focus areas that you're finding? Any one of you can go first.
For us, again, at Parkside, as I said, the foundational skills, so being able to decode the words to recognize the words. We're doing really great work with that. I feel like that continues to be a strength. But where we need to focus now on is more of our language development. So looking at all modalities, listening, speaking, writing, and reading. And so better understanding vocabulary and having a better background knowledge and just being able to better understand the language. And so that's one area, as well as writing is another area that we need to focus on for this year.
Good.
I would say that we have a couple of subgroups that we would like scores to be a little bit higher. Some of that has to do with just some of our teachers are not trained in the science of reading yet. And so this year, a huge emphasis is to get our EL teachers, our title teachers, our SPED teachers trained in really great reading in UFly, in West Virginia, in 95%, so that they do have the resources to meet the needs of their students and really provide a second dose for their students.
I think our greatest need is continuing with vocabulary in all levels, but also informational text for language arts, and then for math, geometry and measurement, with, of course, algebra. Those are always areas that we're trying to strengthen.
Right. I hear a lot of focus on reading taking place across the buildings, and I hear you guys talking a lot of alignment as we kind of go down the line here. And you talk about the different levels, what we're doing, and certainly Parkside has started a lot of the work. Southview's been picking up, and middle school's kind of getting into that now as these students are starting to rotate forward, and we're seeing successes with some of the things happening. What are some trends that you're seeing in some of the data that's driving some of this work?
I think, we're all working on growth and proficiency, and I think things that add to that positively and negatively are attendance and mental health. So if they are frequent, attending school every day, I think that affects their growth and proficiency in the positive, as well as if they are absent. That affects it the negatively. Same with mental health. If they're struggling with mental health issues, that definitely affects their progression towards their academic skills.
Right. We talk a lot about meeting those basic needs and about thinking about the whole child and looking at so many different perspectives, something that we've done more post-COVID. Do you guys think COVID still has an impact on some of the work that's taking place and needs that we see in school? 'Cause I get that question a lot.
Yeah. For us, I see that to be a significant impact on our kiddos. So our kids would have been 2, 3 when we started to lock down and weren't able to go out and things like that. So you think about 2 and 3-year-olds, at that point their speech is developing, their language is developing, they're learning from experiences out in the community. They're going to the grocery store, they're going to church, they're going to, different events. So they're, seeing different people, and during COVID, that didn't happen for a couple of years for some of our kids. So we're seeing a significant impact on speech, language, social emotional needs, having a hard time separating from their parents and families because they didn't have to do that for a long time. So we certainly see the impacts of that for our youngest learners.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that too. I feel like some of our students at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade level have this reliance on just a screen in front of them all the time. And so when we don't have that, sometimes they are kind of taken back, like that's not normal for them. I do feel like the social emotional piece and the focus on building relationships between students and just learning how to play again, learning how to just interact with kids, and learning how to talk and ask questions, just having conversations. So a lot of times I feel like our SEL teachers are pulling kids in small groups and just having that, let's learn a game together. Let's learn how to take turns. Just those basic fundamental skills.
And to build on that, it's using those social skills to be engaged in the lesson or the activity. Being able to interact with others or being engaged in the class as a whole versus just behind the screen.
One of those things that you hear a lot is let's get back to the basics. Let's teach reading, writing, math. Well, one of those basic things are just those basic social emotional things that we just take for granted kids have. And I think you're right. We're seeing that, and if Brian Jones was here from the high school, I think he'd say the same thing at that level. We're seeing more and more where we really have to intentionally teach some of those skills that just the kids really need. And if we're not meeting those basic level needs, then it's hard to focus on the next things that we learned in Ed 101, but
Right.
it just looks different now than it did did a few years back. So well, that's good feedback. Let's talk a little more about Amplify Your Impact. So we said that's our theme this year. What does that look like at each of your sites?
You can go first.
Should I
Lisa.
start? Okay. So
Everyone turn to you.
yeah. So of course we want to continue working on our language arts and our math proficiency and growth. With that, we're trying to continue our work on differentiating the lessons to meet the needs of all the students in the classroom, in the general education classroom, provide those interventions to those at-risk students. This year in the schedule, we added reading and math focus classes to further give support for those students that are at need. We use that data to not only improve our instruction, but also to help us dictate or try to see then if we can place a student in those courses as well. Also, our 5th and 6th grade this year has the addition of Vocabulary Surge, which is a curriculum to build on those vocabulary skills that we mentioned earlier is a need. And then for our SEL component, second step, we teach mental health awareness lessons in the advisory classes. And then also I'll talk a little bit later about the BAR grant that we had that will support that as well.
So I feel like we, at Southview, we focus on literacy, math, and SEL, but really the main focus is making sure that our kids understand that they all can grow and they all can learn. And I feel like that's done by creating an environment where they feel welcome, like this is their school, and we're all in this, and we all contribute to the school and how it feels and how people learn. One of the questions we have on our student survey in SEL class is, are there people within the school that you can relate to or that you can go to should you have a question or a concern? And if a student can't put a staff name down for that, then we have some work we have to do. And so making sure that those foundational needs are met is kind of our number one priority.
I would say the same at Parkside. In addition to making sure that all of those needs are met, we have something similar at Southview. Their students self-rate, whereas at Parkside we have those statements. So we would say something along the lines of, I can use whole body listening to participate in class. And so then the teacher would rate them on those competencies. So then we know what areas we need to work with kids on. So whether it's recognizing their emotions and knowing how to manage their emotions, or using, again, those listening skills. So meeting those SEL needs are really critical and essential first and foremost. But then, of course, we want to make sure that we're helping them grow, because really teaching them to read is our first and foremost priority.
Right. And you talk about learning to read and then reading to learn, and that learning to read happens primarily in those lowest grades. And that leads us in kind of the next topic I want to get into is the READ Act. You know, we used to have the law Read Well by 3rd grade, where we said we want all students at grade level by the time they're 3rd graders. And when the legislation has changed, it just says we want all students to read well, period. At all grade levels, they should be on task. So Darcy, let's talk specifically at Parkside, because that's where this is all starting, and I know you're passionate about reading and reading instruction. So thinking about all those changes taking place, what are a couple specific things that's happening at Parkside to help improve our students' literacy rates?
Well, as we mentioned last year, we really focused on those decoding skills. And so we know that learning to read first takes the opportunity to know what the word is, to be able to recognize the word, to read the word, and then having a connection with that through language, so knowing the meaning of it, and then you put the two of those together, and that's how we get reading comprehension. And so we feel like we're doing a really good job in terms of teaching students to recognize words and to read words, and now we need to start developing more of those other skills, those language skills. So being able to use the vocabulary, having the background knowledge to understand the text, that kind of thing is really where we want to focus this year. In addition to that, the writing, so assuring that students are able to automatically write a letter, know the name of the letter, know the sound of the letter, so that that frees up their cognitive load so that they can better comprehend the text. And so all of those, we're very fortunate, I feel, that the READ Act, I think, caught a number of districts off guard. because they probably adopted some things that were not necessarily in alignment with what the READ Act is requiring. We are very fortunate. The 2 screeners that they have approved, we already use the approved one. Our instruction is right in line with that READ Act, and so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I feel like we're on the right track.
Yeah. So when you talk about our instruction, I mentioned earlier that reading looks different now than it did when we went to school. We don't have the redbirds and the bluebirds like we used to
Right,
have.
right.
Well, give me just a general overview. What's a typical reading lesson look like at Parkside right now?
Sure. So we spend about 120 minutes, 2 hours a day in reading instruction. And so that's not all just sitting in a desk, but rather a number of different activities happen during that 120 minutes. So we take about 10 to 15 minutes and we do what's called Haggerty. And that's really just phonemic awareness. So better understanding and hearing individual sounds in a word. So they might practice saying cat and replacing the k with a b. What word do you have? Bat. So they might take about 10 to 15 minutes with that. Then they'll do a really great reading lesson, 20 minutes to 30 minutes of that time. Really great reading is our phonics lesson. And then our teachers also do an interactive read aloud. So they'll take a book and that might be stretched out over 5 days so that they'll read it a number of different times and look for tricky language. They might look at the vocabulary. They might look at better understanding, having a background knowledge to better understand the text. And so really just dissecting and picking apart that book to help students better understand what they're reading. And then we spend another about 30 to 50 minutes of writing. So letter formation, handwriting, and then composition.
Basic formative skills to
Yeah.
prepare to read. No, that's
Yeah.
great. Pete, let's move to you a little bit. At Southview, you're doing a lot of work around literacy in the READ Act as well. So thinking about a typical reading classroom for a little bit older kid, it's going to have some similarities, but what things would I see in a typical classroom at Southview?
Sure. So with our second graders, we try to not spend too much time doing one activity for too long. So their reading class is broken up into a bunch of different little segments. We have a core block where everybody's getting the same instruction. Then we have a phonics. We use really great reading in second grade as well as that curriculum goes through. But then there's a lot of small group work with individual small groups of students that come back and work with the teacher. And then, like I said before, then the next step is really focusing our EL title teachers to align to what's happening within the classroom. So really similar to what's happening at Parkside, but like I said, a lot of movement. I would say this is a lot different than when I went through elementary school. And it looks like there's somebody from the outside coming in, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And our kids have a great grasp of what's expected of them because we've been doing it from a lower age up. So
Right.
really appreciate what they do at Parkside.
Yeah, great. So in addition to reading, you do a lot of work with math too. As a former math teacher, I know that's a passion of yours. So you guys play off each other really well in that regard. But we do focus on math more as the kid's a little bit older. So you're doing a lot of work around differentiating lessons and making sure to meet students' needs there. Talk a little bit about what that looks like at Southview too.
Yeah. So this year, our math teachers came to me and said, Pete, we really need some way to benchmark our math students like we have DIBELS for reading. And so we're using IXL for the first time at the second, third, and fourth grade level. I feel like it does a good job of assessing where the kids are and meeting their needs in a different format as well. But our teachers are really looking at what we would refer to as the science of mathematics and how that's coming through. And that's not steamrolling through yet, but it's going to be there. And our teachers want what our reading teachers have. They want to know, hey, what do we have to have for basics before we can go to the next step? Because we're seeing that there's some third and fourth graders that are not ready to do what's expected of them. And so what foundational pieces do we have to teach? And so they're just really looking for any kind of professional development. So we're looking at visiting different schools that have the same dynamics, diversity as ours that outperform us right now, and see if there's things that we can pull to incorporate at Southview.
Right. Well, I think that's great work. So for both Pete and Paula, we got an exciting announcement a few weeks ago. We were awarded a BAR grant through MDE. Or MDE is going to cover that for us, that implementation piece. So talk a little bit about this. Tell me, why is that a big deal that we got that?
I feel like the BAR is a system that it's not something necessarily new, that it just streamlines what we're already doing, and it has the same vision of helping everything that we do, wanting to support everything with helping academic support, less behavioral referrals, helping build relationships even more than what we are, whether that's staff to staff, student to student, student to staff. There's a lot of research with BAR over 20 years, so it's not like they're jumping in doing something. We're using a system that is proven. I feel like it will just streamline everything. Like for us, it's going to be a positive and help build even more positive culture in the building.
Kind of pulling data pieces together and
Right.
looking at a systematic approach. We should clarify too, BAR is BARR, it's an acronym, Building Assets, Reducing Risks. Right. So that is the focus there.
And at the elementary level, I feel like we have lots of different meetings throughout the week. We have MTSS meetings, we have SEL meetings, we have SAT team meetings, PBIS team meets. And so BAR will help us kind of encompass all that to kind of realign that. And I'm really excited to just visit some BAR schools and see how they do that, how they pull that together so that we can have, these smaller block meetings and larger block meetings.
Yeah.
And the small and large block meetings are an avenue for the staff to talk about the concerns for those students and to come up with a plan for them. This year, we will start with implementing the I times, which are SEL lessons that focus on building meaningful relationships as well as SEL content. The year 2, it's going to be focused on effective team meetings and or how to address trauma through BAR. And then year 3 is fostering resiliency and reducing substance use through BAR.
So as we're going through here, I know we're getting low on time, but Paula, we've talked about kind of what instruction in general looks like at the elementary schools. It looks a little different at the middle school. A big thing that's different is how intervention works at the middle school. So can you talk specifically about that? When our data is showing us we have a student that's struggling at the middle school level, what does intervention look like there?
So the teachers that have the concern will put in a form that they need support, and then they will come to the SAT, Student Assistance Team meeting, and we will give them suggestions on interventions to provide in the classroom. We also have the reading and math focus groups that I talked about that is intervention-based to give additional support to what they need. And then we track that data, and if it's working, great. If not, we try another way, another intervention. And we can have more than one intervention going on at one time.
Yeah. So a lot of things taking place, and it all comes back to the same thing I've heard all three of you say today, is it's finding what the specific needs are for each student, and then thinking about how can we individually meet that. So I think to Pete's point earlier, it looks a lot different going by a classroom because it's not a lot of this whole group instruction that we're all familiar with, we're all used to. It's a very individualized piece. So it means small groups, it means some individual lessons, and it means interventionists aligning to what's taking place in the classroom, being aware of that core instruction that's happening, but then saying, how can I help a student that's not at that grade level to achieve that grade level and pulling them in, but making sure everyone's, because we get to our MCA testing, which is state expectation at the end, we're all tested at the same level. So how do we make sure all kids are prepared for that piece? So it's a lot of work, and you guys are doing some great things to help us meet that. Our data certainly is starting to show that we're making some progress, heading that right direction. That's what we're always looking for, continuous improvement. We talk about being that continuous improvement school. How are we continually improving to see our scores continue to grow? So appreciate everything you guys are doing in that realm. My last question for you today, is there anything that you want to share just with our community or with our stakeholders that ties to this Amplify Your Impact piece that we haven't talked about today?
I think to just expand on what you said too, I think our education in general for a long time focused on teaching rather than on the learning. I always like to share a cartoon that talks about this. There's this girl and her friend, and she says, I taught my dog how to whistle. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. And they said, well, let's hear it. And then he said, well, I taught him. I didn't say he learned how to whistle. And so that teaching has kind of shifted the same way, as we're really focusing on assuring students get those skills and master those skills. So focusing on the learning rather than on the teaching piece of it.
Right.
I think one thing for me is just empowering our teachers to try something new, be willing to make mistakes so that we do improve.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm driving at Saltillo.
And I think when we talk about amplifying our impact, I also want to talk about not only academic success, but our behaviors have improved significantly this year, and that is due to the effort of all of the teachers and sharing those expectations and following the Tiger traits. That has made a big impact, and with our PBIS team, we are looking more frequently at those data points and where those are happening, where the frequency is, and again, sharing and talking to the students about those expectations.
Yeah, that's awesome. And certainly we talk about state laws and state expectations and district rules and site rules and such, but really what it comes down to is we've got a great set of teachers who will bend over backwards
Absolutely.
to meet our
Yep.
kids' needs and be there for them. So I'm very fortunate to have that community support and know that we have staff that just do such great work that we can work with. So appreciate you guys all joining us today and appreciate you guys all watching Tiger Talk this month. We look forward to seeing you next month.